Alright, Schlockmeisters fans, another re-review from my previous channel. This is Tom Savini as the Ripper. Let's check it out. Our movie starts with a woman having her life ended.
From that description, what famous crime is brought to mind? Mr. Patton.
Jack the Ripper.
Correct. See, that's the kind of picture that's been painted in our minds by Hollywood. The kind of imagery that movie makers are so fond of using to manipulate history and make it more exciting. Brian.
Apparently a similar murder just took place.
Didn't read about it. What Brian is referring to is a murder that took place over the weekend where a prostitute was killed by someone who slit her throat from ear to ear. Police are calling that modern-day Jack the Ripper. Why do you suppose they're doing that, Brian?
A college professor's named Richard Harwell. This is his girlfriend, Carol.
Okay, no worries. Keep it up. I like that. Great.
Hello, Nurse Ratchet.
Richard, I'm in the middle of a class right now.
He and Carol go to an antique store where he finds a funky ring. While watching some horror movie on TV, he drifts. And he begins dreaming about what looks like Carol dancing. And then perhaps being stalked. By him, as Jack the Ripper. In this dream, he then kills her. And then he's gonna disembowel her. Meanwhile, Steve and Cindy, two of his students, are getting it on with their clothes on.
You sure are sweet tonight. Yeah.
Back in school again, they're looking at a book
Except as rumor.
about Jack the Ripper,
Conspiracy
and Richard notices the ring, which he saw in that antique store. So he goes back and buys the ring from the antique store while the radio reports about other murders, Jack the Ripper murders. Meanwhile, our next victim is having trouble getting into her car. Another disemboweling.
Famous left-handed people. Harpo Marx, Judy Garland, Charlie Chaplin, Lynn Vinci, Paul McCartney.
Jack the Ripper. Interesting. That bit of information had eluded me.
So he and Carol are watching the movie Blood Cult.
This thing is good.
Love that cover art.
I got some friends in this one. That guy right there, they call him Potato Head.
Meanwhile, later that night, at the local convenience store that's closed, Back at home, Richard is apparently wearing that ring. Which is smoking. Here's a great argument.
It's the joys of a woman.
No, the answer's a manual too. Give me a no.
Like hell. I worked at the theater where it played. It was a manual of the joys of a woman. I saw it 6 times.
But that's not what the card says, and this is what we're going by.
Right, okay, fine.
Anyway, later on, Steve and Cindy are out at night, wandering through a park, and they get separated briefly. But that was just enough time for the Ripper to strike.
God, Cindy.
Already disemboweled her, too. So the cops are called. He was following the Ripper.
Let's go.
No, stay here.
No, we gotta go. He's getting away.
Who are you anyway?
Stephen, that's the Ripper, the one that's been killing all the girls.
So Steve is now heartbroken that his girlfriend is dead. So he decides to do some more studying on Jack the Ripper. He also apparently got a hold of a gun. Steve has somehow put it all together.
Steve, what are you doing here?
I need to talk to you.
Look, this is really not a good time.
Thank you, man.
Sure, why not, Steve? Come right in.
Talk to you, because I think you're the Ripper. I think you killed Cindy.
Me?
The ring. You know about the ring.
Well, he leaves, and Steve decides to call his teacher's girlfriend to warn her.
Carol Hastings, do you date Professor Harwell at the university?
Yeah?
Do you have a date with him tonight?
Who is this?
Don't meet him. Don't go out with him. He's going to kill you.
Who is this?
So apparently for their date, Richard told her to meet him in this underground parking garage somewhere. And there's Tom Savini.
What? I should think that would be
I
obvious.
guess he turns into Tom Savini and becomes the Ripper at night.
People live in... Too many times I've been stopped short of my goal. I've been hindered in my quest. But tonight, this very night, you are the only thing that stands between me and permanent release from the void that has been my prison. You can kill her,
Steve shows up.
but you can't kill me.
Well, the Ripper might be right. Then Steve grabs this big sharp knife, and off comes the Ripper's fingers, including the ring. Apparently it hurts. And I guess without the power of the ring, he's susceptible to bullets, and he's now turned back into Richard. Still missing his fingers, though. With that, the city is back at peace. The danger is past.
Oh, neat. Something shiny. Wow, it's a ring. Hey, it's kind of neat. Looks kind of weird.
Let me see it.
No, I want it. I think Mom
And
might like it.
that's how our movie ends.
Nah, she won't want it. Let's give it to her as a present.
All right, let's talk about The Ripper. Now, this is a movie that I had on a beta tape back in the 1986 or so. I had it on with 2 other movies. It's a movie I became familiar with because the United Home Video, who put the VHS tape out, had trailers for the Ripper on a lot of their other tapes. So I saw it, and eventually that's why I tracked it down. It stars Tom Savini, who's a famous makeup artist. He also acted in Dawn of the Dead, for example. So, you know, Tom Savini was attached to it, so I figured I should probably track it down, which we did. So, however, it turns out he's very embarrassed by this movie and wants nothing to do with it. You know, now, and he was only in it for about 5 minutes. It's a 102-minute movie, and he shows up at the 90-minute mark and makes his first appearance. So it's a long time before we see him. But anyway, it's a Jack the Ripper movie, basically. So we have this college professor who visits this antique store and comes across this really funky-looking ring and decides to buy it. Well, the ring is associated apparently with Jack the Ripper. Now, Jack the Ripper is also somebody that he studies. He has this like Jack the Ripper course that he teaches. He's also into horror movies. But, you know, he puts this ring on, and then some women, prostitutes, or was it prostitutes? I don't know. Maybe it's just women. I don't know. Yeah, just women, I guess, start dying in town. It's similar to what the prostitutes were like in the Whitechapel murder days back in 1880s, I guess that was. So there's similarities between Jack the Ripper and what's happening now. Of course, with this ring on, it basically turns him into like a Dr. Jekyll type, where he doesn't remember, I'm sorry, a Mr. Hyde type, where he doesn't remember anything. You know, he turns into the Ripper at night, kills people, and then in the daytime he has no recollection or anything that happened the night before. Well, one of his students who's very into horror movies with him, and they kind of have a little bit of a friendly relationship, although the teacher is kind of bored with him, but he puts two and two together and somehow figures out that his teacher is probably Jack the Ripper. There's this book that shows a picture of a ring, this ring that he's been wearing, and then when his girlfriend gets killed by the Ripper, he confronts his teacher at his house and says, "I know you're doing it, you're the guy," and they get into a fight. He leaves, the teacher leaves, and then he ends up in this warehouse somewhere where his girlfriend is there. And then suddenly he turns into Jack the Ripper, who's Tom Savini. So although we see the Ripper killing people, we don't see the Ripper's face until the very last scene. So most of the other scenes, you know, that's how Tom Savini was able to be in this movie for about 10 minutes, if that actually. So anyway, we see Tom Savini, a fight ensues there, and they end up, the student actually shows up in the warehouse and takes this knife thing and chops off the fingers, two of the fingers, and the ring pops off too, and that basically kills the Ripper. And that's kind of how our movie ends. So that is the Ripper for you. So anyway, yeah, the movie, it's okay, but it's really slow in parts, and it's a little too long. It's an hour and 42 minutes. Probably could have been about an hour and 20 and have been a little more palatable. There is some decent gore in this movie, though. It's a shot on video movie. There's no nudity or anything like that. It's just one of those VHS relics from the mid-'80s, which we all saw on our shelves. I think it was like one of those giant clamshell boxes the United Home Video put out. I think I actually might have a pre-recorded VHS of this, but this is available on this individual DVD. I think there's a triple DVD with it also, with a couple other movies on it as well. I also enjoyed the fact that in the movie, they were watching the movie Blood Cult, which, you know, the cover of that box might look very familiar to people who watch this YouTube channel quite a bit. And yeah, there's also some other tidbits in there. They were, the kid and his girlfriend were playing like a Trivial Pursuit game, and there was an argument about the title of a movie, whether it was Emmanuel 2 or Emmanuel Joys of a Woman, which I know is the same movie because I've watched every damn Emmanuel movie that exists. So, but yeah, you don't see a lot of Emmanuel references in movies, so I enjoyed that too. So anyway, that is the Ripper. So anyway, it's okay. It's okay. It's a little long, a little slow, but it's okay. So check it out. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think about Tom Savini as the Ripper. Watch it. Bye.